Arabic verbs, like the verbs in other Semitic languages, and the entire vocabulary in those languages, are based on a set of 2, 3, 4 and also 5 consonants called a root. The root communicates the basic meaning of the verb e.g.k-t-b, write, qr, read, kl, eat, changes to the vowels in between the consonants, along with prefixes or suffixes, specify grammatical functions such as person, gender, number, tense, mood, and voice. An example from the root k-t-b, write, various categories are marked on verbs, 2 tenses, 2 voices, 2 genders, 3 persons, 3 numbers, 6 moods in the non-past only, 19 forms, the derivational systems indicating derivative concepts such as intensive, causative, reciprocal, reflexive, frequentative, etc. For each form, there is also an active and a passive participle and a verbal noun. Weakness is an inherent property of a given verb determined by the particular consonants of the verb root, with 5 main types of weakness and 2 or 3 subtypes of each type. Arabic grammarians typically use the root fl to indicate the particular shape of any given element of a verbal paradigm. As an example, the form e.g.k-t-b, he is corresponded, would be listed generically as for alu, specifying the generic shape of a strong form via passive verb, third-person masculine singular present indicative. The maximum possible total number of verb forms derivable from a root, not counting participles and verbal nouns, is approximately 13. Person, number, gender forms, times 7.385 tense, mood combinations, counting the future, times 17 form, voice combinations, for a total of 1,632. Each of these has its own stem form, and each of these stem forms itself comes in numerous varieties, according to the weakness of the underlying root. Inflectional categories. Each particular lexical verb is specified by 4 stems, 2 each for the active and passive voices. In a particular voice, one stem is used for the past tense, and the other is used for the present and future tenses, along with non-indicative moods, e.g., subjunctive and imperative. The past and non-past stems are sometimes also called the perfective stem and imperfective stem, respectively, based on a traditional misinterpretation of Arabic stems as representing grammatical aspect rather than grammatical tense. To the past stem, suffixes are added to mark the verb for person, number and gender, while to the non-past stem, a combination of prefixes and suffixes are added. A total of 13 forms exist for each of the 2 stems, specifying person, number, and gender. There are 6 separate moods in the non-past: indicative, imperative, subjunctive, jussive, short energetic and long energetic. The moods are generally marked by suffixes. When no number suffix is present, the endings are u for indicative, a for subjunctive, no ending for imperative and jussive, and for short energetic, ana for a longer energetic. When number suffixes are present, the moods are either distinguished by different forms of the suffixes, or not distinguished at all. The imperative exists only in the second person and is distinguished from the jussive by the lack of the normal second person prefix -2. The third person masculine singular past tense form serves as the dictionary form used to identify a verb, similar to the infinitive in English. For example, the verb meaning write is often specified as kataba, which actually means he wrote. This indicates that the past tense stem is katab. The corresponding non-past stem is ktub, as in yaktubu, he writes. Derivational categories. Conjugations. The system of verb conjugations in Arabic is quite complicated and is formed along two axes. One axis, known as the form, is used to specify grammatical concepts such as causative, intensive, reciprocal, passive or reflexive, and involves varying the stem form. The other axis, known as the weakness, is determined by the particular consonants making up the root. For example, defective verbs have a W or Y as the last root consonant, and doubled verbs have the second and third consonants the same. These weaknesses have the effect of inducing various irregularities in the stems and endings of the associated verbs. Examples of the different forms of a sound verb from the root e.g.k-t-b, write. The main types of weakness are as follows. Regular verb conjugation for person, number, tense, aspect, mood, and participles. In Arabic, the grammatical person and number as well as the mood are designated by a variety of prefixes and suffixes. The following table shows the paradigm of a regular sound for my verb, kataba, to write. Final short vowels that are part of the formal paradigm but often omitted in speech are given in parentheses. This includes most final short vowels, but not in feminine plural now, and not normally in past tense second person feminine singular t. The initial vowel in the imperative varies from verb to verb as follows. The initial vowel is U if the stem begins with two consonants and the next vowel is U or U. The initial vowel is I if the stem begins with two consonants and the next vowel is anything else. There is no initial vowel if the stem begins with one consonant. In unvocalized Arabic, katabtu, katabta, katabti and katabat are all written the same. Forms katabtu and katabta can be abbreviated to katat in spoken Arabic and in pausa, making them also sound the same. In final is silent tense. There are two tenses in Arabic, the past tense and the present tense. The future tense in classical Arabic is formed by adding either the prefix "ar" of the separate word "sorfa" onto the beginning of the present tense verb, e.g., "Sa yaktubu" or "sorfa yaktubu," he will write. In some contexts, the tenses represent aspectual distinctions rather than tense distinctions. The usage of Arabic tenses is as follows. The past tense often specifically has the meaning of a past perfective, i.e., it expresses the concept of he did as opposed to he was doing. The latter can be expressed using the combination of the past tense of the verb kana to be with the present tense or active participle, e.g., kana yaktubu or kana kataban, he was writing. There are some special verbs known as compound verbs that can express many grammatical aspects such as intuitive, durative, etc. For example, bada yalfitu nazara means it started to attract attention, which bada conveys the meaning of to start doing something. The two tenses can be used to express relative tense when following other verbs in a serial verb construction. In such a construction, the present tense indicates time simultaneous with the main verb, while the past tense indicates time prior to the main verb. In all but form I, there is only one possible shape for each of the past and non-past stems for a given root. In form I, however, different verbs have different shapes. Examples: kataba yaktubu, write; kasaba yaksabu, earn; kara yakru, read; kadima yakdamu, turn; kabura yakburu, become big, grow up. Notice that the second vowel can be any of a, I, U in both past and non-past stems. The vowel A occurs in most past stems, while I occurs in some and U occurs only in a few stative verbs. The most common patterns are past A, non-past U or Y, past A, non-past A, past I, non-past A, past U, non-past U. Mood. There are three moods, whose forms are derived from the imperfective stem: the indicative mood, usually ending in u, the subjunctive, usually ending in a, and the jussive with no ending. In less formal Arabic and in spoken dialects, the indicative and subjunctive have shortened endings, identical to jussive. The imperative is formed by dropping the verbal prefix from the imperfective jussive stem, e.g.k-t-b present, single quote dot. If the result starts with two consonants followed by a vowel, an elidable alif is added to the beginning of the word, usually pronounced as I, e.g. isel, wash, or ifal, do. If the present form vowel is u, then the alif is also pronounced as u, e.g. aktub, write, single quote dot. Negative imperatives are formed from the jussive. The exception to the above rule is the form IV verbs. In these verbs, a non-elidable alif pronounced as a is always prefixed to the imperfect jussive form, e.g. arsal, send, adaftad, single quote dot. The subjunctive is used in subordinate clauses after certain conjunctions. The jussive is used in negation, in negative imperatives, and in the fortatively plus jussive. For example, to sgm imperfect indicative tafalu, you are doing. Subjunctive and tafala, that you do. Jussive la tafal, its meaning is dependent upon the prefix which attaches to it. In this case, it means may you do not do. Single quote dot. Shorter energetic tafalan, its meaning is dependent upon the prefix which attaches to it. If the prefix is li, it means you should do. Long energetic tafalana, it has more emphasis than the shorter energetic. Its meaning is dependent upon the prefix which attaches to it. If the prefix is li, it means you must do. Imperative ifal, do, single quote dot dot. Voice. Arabic has two verbal voices, active and passive. The passive voice is expressed by a change in vocalization. For example, active faala, he did, yafalu, he is doing. Passive fu'ila, it was done, yufalu, it is being done. Notice that active and passive forms are spelled identically in Arabic, only the vowel markings differ. Weak roots. Roots containing one or two of the radicals w, y, or often lead to verbs with special phonological rules because these radicals can be influenced by the surroundings. Such verbs are called weak, and the paradigms must be given special attention. In the case of Hamza, these peculiarities are mainly orthographical, since Hamza is not subject to elision. According to the position of the weak radical in the root can be classified into four classes. First weak, second weak, third weak, and doubled, where both the second and third radicals are identical. Some roots fall into more than one category at once. Doubled roots. The following shows a paradigm of a typical form I doubled verb madda, to extent parallel to verbs of the faala type. See notes following the table for explanation. All doubled verbs are conjugated in a parallel fashion. The endings are for the most part identical to those of strong verbs, but there are two stems in each of the past and non-past. The regular stems are identical to the stem forms of sound verbs, while the modified stems have the two identical consonants pulled together into a geminate consonant and the vowel between moved before the geminate. In the above verb madda, to extend, the past stems are madad, mad, and the non-past stems are mdud, mud. In the table, places where the regular past stem occurs are in silver, and places where the regular non-past stem occurs are in gold. Everywhere else, the modified stem occurs. No initial vowel is needed in most of the imperative forms because the modified non-past stem does not begin with two consonants. The concept of having two stems stems for each tense, one for endings beginning with vowels and one for other endings, occurs throughout the different kinds of weaknesses. Following the above rules, endingless jussives would have a form like tamrud, while the corresponding indicatives and subjunctives would have forms like tamadu, tamada. As a result, for the doubled verbs in particular, there is a tendency to harmonize these forms by adding a vowel to the jussives, usually a, sometimes I. These are the only irregular endings in these paradigms, and have been indicated in boldface. The masculine singular imperative likewise has multiple forms, based on the multiple forms of the jussive. The various types of doubled form I verbs, assimilated roots. Most first weak verbs have a W as the first root. These verbs are entirely regular in the past tense. In the non-past, the W drops out, leading to a shorter stem to find, where the stem is JID in place of a longer stem like JLID from the verb jalada, to whip, flog. This same stem is used throughout, and there are no other irregularities except for the imperative, which has no initial vowel, consistent with the fact that the stem for the imperative begins with only one consonant. The various types of assimilated form I verbs. Hollow roots. The following shows a paradigm of a typical form I hollow verb qala, to say, parallel to verbs of the fala type. See notes following the table for explanation. All hollow verbs are conjugated in a parallel fashion. The endings are identical to strong verbs, but there are two stems in each of the past and non-past. The longer stem is consistently used whenever the ending begins with a vowel, and the shorter stem is used in all other circumstances. The longer stems end in a long vowel plus consonant, while the shorter stems end in a short vowel plus consonant. The shorter stem is formed simply by shortening the vowel of the long stem in all paradigms other than the active past of form I verbs. In the active past paradigms of form I, however, the longer stem always has a vowel, while the shorter stem has a vowel U or I corresponding to the actual second root consonant of the verb. No initial vowel is needed in the imperative forms because the non-past stem does not begin with two consonants. There are various types of form I hollow verbs. Qala kulna, to say, formed from verbs with W as the second root consonant and parallel to verbs of the fala type. Sarasona, to get going, to travel, formed from verbs with Y as the second root consonant and parallel to verbs of the fala type. Kafakafna, to fear, formed from verbs with W as the second root consonant and parallel to verbs of the fala type. Namanimna, to sleep, formed from verbs with Y as the second root consonant and parallel to verbs of the fala type. The passive paradigm of all form I hollow verbs is as follows: kila kilna, to be said. Defective roots faa. The following shows a paradigm of a typical form I defective verb rama, to throw, parallel to verbs of the fala type. See notes following the table for explanation. Two stems each of the two main stems comes in two variants, a full and a shortened. For the past stem, the full is ramai, shortened to ram in much of the third person. For the non-past stem, the full is rmiy, shortened to rum before ui. The full non-past stem rmiy appears as rmi when not before a vowel. This is an automatic alternation in classical Arabic. The places where the shortened stems occur are indicated by silver, gold. For irregular endings, the endings are actually mostly regular, but some endings are irregular in boldface. Some of the third-person past endings are irregular, in particular those in ram, he threw, ram, or they threw. These simply have to be memorized. Two kinds of non-past endings are irregular, both in the suffixless parts of the paradigm. In the indicative, the full stem rma actually appears normally. What is irregular is the lack of the u normally marking the indicative. In the jussive, on the other hand, the stem actually assumes a unique shortened form rmi, with a short vowel that is not represented by a letter in the Arabic faa. The following shows a paradigm of a typical form defective verb grammatical, parallel to verbs of the faa type. Verbs of this sort are entirely parallel to verbs of the faa type, although the exact forms can still be tricky. See notes following the table for explanation. Verbs of this sort work nearly identically to verbs of the faa type. They're of the same or irregular endings in the same places, and again two stems in each of the past and non-past tenses, with the same stems used in the same places. In the past, the full stem is da or shortened to da. In the non-past, the full stem is duw, rendered as du and not before a vowel, and shortened to d before ui. The Arabic spelling has the following rules. In the third-person masculine singular past, regular alif appears instead of alif maksura, hence not asterisk. The otiose final alif appears only after the final waw of the plural, not elsewhere, hence you call, but you call, even though they are both pronounced tadu. Faiya. The following shows a paradigm of a typical form defective verb nasiya, to forget, parallel to verbs of the fa'ila type. These verbs differ in a number of significant respects from either of the above types. Multiple stems. This variant is somewhat different from the variants with iu in the non-past. As with other third weak verbs, there are multiple stems in each of the past and non-past. A full stem composed following the normal rules and one or more shortened stems. In this case, only one form in the past uses a shortened stem, nasu, they forgot. All other forms are constructed regularly, using the full stem nasi or its automatic pre-consonant variant nasi. In the non-past, however, there are at least three different stems. The full stem nsay occurs before a or n, that is before dual endings, feminine plural endings and energetic endings corresponding to forms that are end-ingless in the jussive. The modified stem nsa occurs in end-ingless forms. As usual with third weak verbs, it is shortened to nsa in the jussive. These forms are marked with red. Before endings normally beginning with iu, the stem and endings combine together into a shortened form, e.g. expected *tar nsay ina, you forget *tar nsay una, you forget, instead become tar ensina, tar ensona respectively. The table above chooses to segment them as tar nsay na, tar nsay wna, suggesting that a shortened stem nsa combines with irregular endings yn and lt, *ina, w and a and lt, *una. Similarly, subjunctive jussive tar nsa w and lt, *tar nsa yu, but note energetic tas or ana and lt, *tar nsa ana, where the original *q has assimilated to u. Consistent with the above analysis, we analyze this form as tar nsa wana, with an irregular energetic ending wana where a glide constant has developed after the previous vowel. However, since all moods in this case have a form containing nsaw, an alternative analysis would consider nsaw and nsay as stems. These forms are marked with gold. For irregular endings, the endings are actually mostly regular, but some endings are irregular in the non-past. In boldface, the non-past endings in the suffixless parts of the paradigm. In the indicative and subjunctive, the modified stem NSA appears, and is shortened to NSA in the jussive. In the forms actually appears normally. What is irregular is the lack of the U normally marking the indicative. In the jussive, on the other hand, the stem actually assumes a unique shortened form NSA, with a short vowel that is not represented by a letter in the Arabic script. In the forms that would normally have suffixes un, I, U, the stem and suffix combine to produce NSAY, NSAW. These are analyzed here as consisting of a shortened stem form NSA plus irregular endings.